Hey guys, Dr. Cool here doing another video for you, and this is actually going to be the first video in a series that we're doing on digestive and gut health. So if you've been to my website or our YouTube channel, you've probably seen videos or content where I talk about digestive health being the most important determining factor to your level of overall health and well-being and your body's capacity to heal too. And I want you to just think about this for a minute conceptually. You know, we talk about cellular inflammation, and when I work with clients, they may have things like diabetes or thyroid disorders, chronic fatigue, brain fog, but all of those symptoms that our body gives us, in my opinion, and I believe this is going to make a lot of sense for you too, all of those symptoms are really downstream of the real issue. The real issue is a compromised digestive tract, dysbiosis in the gut, inflammation, and just an overall unhealthy gut and microbiome. And I'll discuss those terms and what those mean as we get into this video series here. So follow me here. Those other downstream symptoms, if you want to build a healthier brain, or if you want to build new thyroid tissue, or if we want to improve the health of the cells of our body, what needs to happen in order for that to take place? Well, the first thing we need to do is eat the right foods, right? Your body is made up of cells they get their nutrients, and you literally make new tissue from the foods that we're eating. So hopefully you're eating a healthy diet. But if you are, let's assume you're eating the right types of foods, what has to happen to those foods? They enter into our digestive system, right? So digestion begins in the mouth, your saliva begins breaking down foods, and then it enters into your stomach for a lot of the real breakdown, into the small intestine for further breakdown, and then some of those nutrients get assimilated through your small intestine wall, which we'll talk a lot about today. And then they get carried as nutrients and as vitamins and minerals to the cells of your body to make new healthy tissue. So really when we break it down, if we want to create healthier cells and healthier tissue, it comes from the food we're eating, but we have to have the digestive capacity and integrity to break down those foods. This concept is nothing new that I've come up with. You know, there's a famous saying that says, all disease begins where? All disease begins in our gut. Do you know who said that? That was actually said over 2,000 years ago by the father of medicine, Hippocrates. So they knew this way back then. We are currently coming back and really understanding now really the significance of that statement and what our digestive system means to our overall health. Going back to the food for a minute here, we said you have to eat healthy foods and it has to get broken down to make new tissue in our body. Well, actually, whatever goes into our system, whatever goes into our mouth is technically still outside of your body. Follow me here for a minute on this because I know it sounds crazy. When you swallow the food that you're eating and it goes in your system, your digestive tract, your digestive system is a long tube. Basically, if we get down to the most basic elements of it, it is a long tube that goes from one end to the other. The food gets broken down at various points along the way, and then the intelligence in your body, the intelligence in your digestive system picks and chooses what gets absorbed through your bowel wall to your bloodstream to circulate as nutrients for your body, and whatever can't be used gets passed out as waste. So literally, whatever you eat, only the nutrients are supposed to be allowed to pass through into your bloodstream and be carried as fuel for your cells, and all the waste products get passed out. So one of the first things we're discussing in this video today is there's two parts to gut health. There is your intestinal lining, which is what we're discussing in today's video. You've probably heard of the term leaky gut. Doesn't really sound too fun. You might not know exactly what that is, or you probably may not even know what this means to your health and to your absorption of your foods or lack thereof if you have leaky gut. So that's what we're going to discuss in today's video. In the next video, we're going to discuss what's called your microbiome. And that's a term for all the bacteria and fungi and all the things that are supposed to be healthy and living in harmony in your digestive tract that influence so many aspects of your health, your cellular health, brain health. I mean, we'll get into all this stuff. The bacteria part is fascinating to me, but really it starts with digestion first. So we're going to dive in and talk about leaky gut today, what that is, the causes of it, and some things you can begin doing immediately to begin healing your digestive tract lining. So if we go over here to my chart, if we talk about leaky gut, you know, there are many different parts of your digestive system. It starts in your mouth, it goes through your esophagus to your stomach. The food then passes from your stomach to your small intestine. That's what we're going to talk about for leaky gut today. And there are other organs that work with your small intestine, like your liver, gallbladder, and pancreas, to further break down foods and then after it travels through the 3 parts of your small intestine, it goes to your colon for further fermentation and then elimination of waste products. So when we talk about leaky gut, we're not talking about the entire digestive system. Leaky gut means specifically your small intestine. So the foods, once they've been broken down by the saliva and then by your stomach, they get passed into the small intestine for further breakdown and absorption. So your small intestine is actually where the absorption of the nutrients occur. They actually leave your small intestine, they sift through the cell walls that make up your intestine, and then once they get through that cell wall of your intestine lining, now they're into your bloodstream. Now let me ask you this, what does your bloodstream do? It circulates, so it carries, once the nutrients leave your small intestine and get down into the bloodstream, now they circulate throughout your system, which they're supposed to do for nutrients and the right vitamins and minerals going to the cells of your body to reinforce health and to make new tissue. So that's how it's supposed to happen, right? The good things get broken down, the vitamins, the minerals, the nutrients pass through, but all the waste isn't allowed to pass through. It gets sent on to the large intestine for processing and elimination. So leaky gut means that literally this process of permeability has become damaged. And now the things that shouldn't be crossing through are getting down into your bloodstream, where once they are there, now they can cause a lot of body-wide systemic inflammation. You hear a lot of people talking about cellular inflammation, how the cells are the most important part of their body. And I will tell you, vitally, vitally important. You're only as healthy as your cells. But if your cells are inflamed, almost in every case, it's going to be because what we're putting into our body has caused damage to our gut, which is supposed to act as a barrier. It acts as a fishing net, catching the big things that shouldn't cross through and only letting the small things cross through. If that fishing net, if that protective barrier has been damaged, now the stuff crossing through your gut that should not be crossing through gets to your bloodstream, where it circulates and drives systemic body-wide inflammation. So what do we have going on here right now? This picture here, this is like kind of a snapshot of a segment of your small intestine. And what we're looking at, if we look at this kind of tube of your small intestine has one layer of cells that form these things called tight junctions. It's like these tight junctions where all the cells are close to each other. And you see these little, hopefully you can see this on my chart here, all these little finger-like projections. These things are called villi. These finger-like projections, they grab onto the nutrients that once your food's broken down. And then the nutrients, which I have here as small black dots, these things sift through the cell wall, sift through these tight junctions, down into your bloodstream. This is where they begin to circulate. In leaky gut, and we'll talk about the test later on that you can use in black and white to tell if you have leaky gut. Leaky gut means that these tight junctions, the cells that make up your small intestine wall, have become inflamed and damaged. And so over here in the red, when you have leaky gut and there's been inflammation driving this damage, those tight junctions begin to open up and separate. And now instead of really only the small nutrient particles crossing through, now we have food additives, undigested food particles, toxins, all these things that are really part of the standard American diet begin to cross through into our bloodstream that are not supposed to be there, and those are the things which drive the inflammation systemically. So, inflammation is the primary culprit. We'll always go back to inflammation. Inflammation is the primary culprit that drives this damage to the cell walls in your small intestine and ultimately leads to leaky gut. So knowing that, we know inflammation drives that damage to the small intestine, we should ask ourselves next, what are the things that drive this inflammation the most? What are some of the things that cause leaky gut and drive this inflammatory process in our GI tract? And the first one of these things, and you see them all up in the blue here, the first one of these things is stress. So we have sayings for this stuff too. We have like sayings like, I'm worried, sick, or I'm sick to my stomach. We understand that our mental state affects our gut. If a person has to get up and do a public speaking event, or if somebody's about to propose to their spouse, you might get what? You might get butterflies in your stomach. If you're always worried, that can cause you to have, upset stomach. It can cause you literally to begin to feel ill and sick, and you might not even want to eat. So we understand that there's our brain affects our gut function. It's actually a 2-lane highway. We'll talk about that next time. Your gut function absolutely affects your brain too. But The brain affects the gut. Your mental state affects your gut. There are two parts to your nervous system. You have your sympathetic nervous system, which is your fight or flight, like your stress type response. And then you have your parasympathetic, your rest and digest nervous system. Well, what do you know? Rest and digest. Your gut functions best when you are in a relaxed parasympathetic nervous system state. We're not designed to live our lives in the sympathetic fight or flight type state. You know, in ancient times, if you were being chased by a lion or a bear or something, you would need to get out of that situation and literally run or fight to save your life. But then once that threat was over, that fight or flight response would come down again, and you would enter back into that parasympathetic state. Well, how many of us today, we're really not running from lions and bears anymore, but we live in chronic stress due to our jobs, due to relationships, due to finances, due to so many things about 21st century American life, that if we're living in a chronic state of stress, that stress suppresses your immune function, and it drives a lot of GI-based inflammation that will lead to the leaky gut, and you literally will not heal if you're locked into a state of stress. I don't want to get too far off on this tangent here, but if you're watching this and you are stressed, there are no foods I can give you, there are no supplements I can put you on that are going to overcome the negative effects from living your life in a chronically stressed state. So in some situations, you can remove yourself from that stress. In other ones, if you can't, like if it's a relationship or a spouse or a financial issue, we have to find constructive ways to deal with this and a plan of action for how we're not going to let this, affect our life every single day, because you won't heal if you're living in that state. So that brings me to number 2 on the list, which is toxins. Toxins are really from our standard American diet, from the foods most people are eating. Here I'm talking about the artificial sweeteners, the damaged rancid fats. I've done videos on this stuff, guys. Go back and watch my video on the 7 worst foods you may be eating that are making you feel like crap. But it's the damaged inflammatory fats, it's the artificial sweeteners, it's the preservatives, the dyes, the colorings, all of these things that are called food additives that are in our food supply, that the average American eats over 100 pounds of these food additives per year. These things are additives, chemical additives, that your digestive system was never designed to see, and absolutely never designed to detox from or tolerate too. So if it's a short term, like you eat a bad meal and you won't feel too good after it, it's not going to harm your gut in the long term. Your body is meant to deal with short term problems like that. But if it's the chronic, day in, day out onslaught of these toxins to your system, that's going to drive a perpetual chronic inflammation that over the months or years, depending on how compromised you are, will lead to this breakdown of the cell wall in your small intestine, and it drives the leaky gut. So toxins are a big one. Food particles. And food can be not just the toxins in our food, but GMO foods, so what's been done to our foods, what's been added into our foods, the antibiotics and the hormones and the steroids. And when you think of food particles with leaky gut, a lot of articles you'll come to will say things like casein and dairy, and really the biggest one is gluten. Well, if you know my stance on those things, the foods are not the problem, it's what we've done to these foods. So if you go back and watch my videos on dairy or on what's been done to our grains, really it's not the gluten and the casein, it's what's been done to these foods that have made these foods overproduce things like gluten and different types of gluten than people used to see or eat traditionally. So 100 years ago, 1,000 years ago, nobody had leaky gut. Nobody had these type of digestive issues. They ate grain, they drank dairy, so all of a sudden what's the problem now? Go back and watch those videos. There's been so much alterations done to our food that the foods we're eating today, your body doesn't recognize it as being a food. And so it drives inflammation. And absolutely, if you're eating modern grains, that gluten is horrible for you and it will cause a lot of digestive issues. If you're autoimmune, or if you've been living with chronic digestive issues too, you may not even be able to do some of the grains or the dairy that I eat. You may literally need a break from those foods for months in order to allow your digestive tract to heal, getting on like an autoimmune protocol type diet. And then once we regain digestive capacity again, we can enter in ancient original versions, like heirloom versions of those foods. So stress, toxins, food particles, pathogens. Actually, before I go to this, the food particles too. If you are a person who is drinking a ton of water with your meals, or if you're not chewing your foods properly, even if you're eating the right types of foods, if you are sending in large particles down your gullet, your stomach's not meant to break those things down, and neither are your small intestine too. You're supposed to be eating your food in a relaxed setting and chewing it like, this might sound crazy, but chewing it to a paste, like a toothpaste type consistency. Over diluting your digestive enzymes by drinking a ton of fluids or not chewing your food properly can absolutely add to the food particle damage too. Talking next, we have pathogens here. Pathogens are infectious bacterial, viral, or fungal, or maybe even parasitic cultures that are growing in our gut. Now, when we talk about healthy bacteria in the next video, that should be localized to your colon. You shouldn't have bacteria living in your small intestine. That's called SIBO, S-I-B-O, small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. However, even in your large intestine, if you have overgrowths of pathogenic bacteria, or what's called dysbiosis, not enough of the good guys, too many of the bad guys, or things like candida overgrowing or parasite type infections, that can affect your small intestine too, and it can affect how your intestines function. So we run a test called a GI map test. I've done this in a previous video. I think like 2 videos ago, I did one on the GI map stool test that we run. That is the most comprehensive test to look at everything growing in your gut, good and bad. And not just like a microscope exam, the DNA presence of these things too. So if we suspect pathogens, I run the stool test on pretty much every client I take on because gut health is so important. We need to know what's growing in there. The last thing is drugs and medications. You know, whatever you put into your mouth and swallow down has to be processed by your stomach. If we're taking these pharmaceutical drugs, these medications, your body has to deal, your gut specifically, has to deal with the side effects and the processing of these drugs. So of course they're going to harm digestion, they can drive inflammation through your small intestine as they're being broken down, and those chemical agents have to get processed by your small intestine. If these drugs cause side effects, you know, especially in relation to digestion, that's really just a fancy way of labeling poisoning. You know, the word side effect means a toxic poisoning type effect from these drugs. I love the comedian George Carlin. He's passed away now, but if you ever watched any of his bits before, he had one on soft language that Americans use to disguise the true meanings of things. That's never been more true than with the words side effects for drugs. It makes it seem like it's not that bad of a thing. It's just like it's an unintended consequence from this drug that, you know, your body will deal with. But really, no, if you're taking these medications and you have digestive type issues, these drugs and the toxic effects from them can literally poison your gut and drive this inflammation too. So your liver and your gut have to process any of the medications you're taking. Little sidebar here, I'm not telling you to stop your drugs. In fact, don't ever stop anything without talking to your doctor first. I have to say that so that I don't get in any trouble here. But yeah, if you don't like the medications you're on, you need to work with a health practitioner who can get you healthy enough to the point where you may not need them, and then safely work with your prescribing doctor to either reduce them or to get off them, whatever you guys come to an agreement on there. All right, so if we talk about the things that are driving inflammation in the gut, what happens is once these tight junctions are damaged and the inflammation is present, you'll start noticing different symptoms that your body gives you. So one of the first things would be food sensitivities. If you know you can't tolerate a certain food, if you can't do like legumes and beans, if you can't do nuts and seeds, if you can't do grains, gluten, if you can't do dairy, you know, those are the beginning signs that something's off digestive capacity wise right now. Another big thing is like bloating or acid reflux too. If you have GERD, acid reflux, things like constantly cycling that acid back into your esophagus, or if you eat a meal and you're looking in a mirror and your stomach's all bloated, that was my biggest thing before. You know, those are the beginning signs that stuff is crossing through in your bloodstream. All that swelling and bloating is absolutely cardinal sign indicative of this inflammation in the leaky gut. If this goes on unchecked, the next thing will be immune system issues. So you might get sick more frequently. If something's going around, you're always the person that gets it. Asthma and allergies are huge signs that something's going on in the digestive system too, specifically leaky gut. So 80% of your immune system is located in the gut. I'll talk more about this next video because I want to save some of this content for then. But if you're having immune system type issues, always look to the gut first, specifically leaky gut, asthma, allergies, which are like overreactions by your immune system to stimuli in your environment, like pollen, that it shouldn't be overreacting to. So those are cardinal signs. And if this all goes on unchecked, the last thing down here is autoimmune disease. Again, I'll cover this a ton next video here. But if 80% of your immune system is located in the gut, and the bacteria in your gut influence what your immune system does, and your small intestine acts as a barrier, stopping the things from crossing through into your bloodstream that would activate or trigger your immune system. Hey, the gut is the first place we have to go to stop the onslaught of autoimmune diseases too. There is not a faster growing condition in America today than autoimmune diseases from a chronic health standpoint. So 1 in 6 Americans are affected. We'll dive a lot more into that next video. So now that we know all the bad, we know what leaky gut is, we know what kind of drives it, what are some of the things that we can do to begin correcting leaky gut? Can your gut heal? And if it can, what can we give our gut to speed that process along? Well, absolutely your body can heal. As long as you have a breath in your lungs, God created an amazing body that has a tremendous capacity to heal if we do 2 things. If we remove sources of interference and then we supply our body with what it needs to heal itself. So some of the sources of interference we talked about today, we got to manage stress. We have to detox and get the toxins out of our diet. We have to get on the right type diet. For someone with digestive issues, that may mean like an autoimmune protocol at first. And in some of these following videos too, I will get more into diet and we'll get even into fasting too. In fact, go back and watch my videos on intermittent fasting, because when you just stop intaking any food, that allows your gut to redirect all the energy. Instead of breaking down food, it can now just focus on healing and repair. So if there are any pathogens, we have to investigate that through the right type of testing, and then through supplemental means or the right dietary changes or fasting or different lifestyle strategies, begin to address any overgrowth of bacteria, viruses, fungi, parasites, or worms that may be growing in the gut too. And also this test investigate how your pancreas and your gallbladder and your liver are functioning with your small intestine to break down your foods. And then finally, drugs. Don't stop any drugs, like I said, without talking to your doctor first. But if you're taking a lot of medications, keep in mind that may be a factor that's inhibiting your gut health. So once we remove the good things, some of the stuff that we can do that I use with clients to begin healing the gut, fasting, go back and watch my videos on that, but also bone broth. So bone broth is full of collagen and gelatin. In the old days, when people would make broth, it sounds gross to us today, but they would use the whole animal. They would put the bones in there with the tendons and the ligaments and some meat on it. They would put the organ meats in there too and cook that up with different types of herbs and different types of soup-based vegetables that will go in there and create a healing type broth that collagen and gelatin is amazing at repairing these cells that make up your small intestine. It's like literally going in there and mending and repairing the fishing nets that's supposed to be, catching the bad things and letting only the good stuff sift through. So collagen is great. I will link the types of collagen and gelatin that I take from a supplement standpoint beneath this video. So I use Great Lakes collagen, kosher collagen from grass-fed beef, awesome types of collagen and gelatin to make. But like anything, I believe the whole foods are the best version of these things. So you can take a collagen supplement and it may help. It will help. But specifically, you should also be making your homemade broths too. I combine both of them together. I'll make a homemade broth, I'll drink it in a coffee mug, and I'll put some of these collagens, like a spoonful of each, in there for like a double effect, like kind of like a super broth that you'll drink. Protocols for this, you have to work with a health practitioner, get the right testing done for me to give you the exact protocols. But as a rule of thumb, if you have digestive issues, do this daily. 1, 2, 3 mugs a day. Drink the bone broth. If you're not getting a good enough response, drink more of it. You might need to combine it with fasting too, or investigate if there are other pathogen type influences that are keeping the broth from having the greatest effect in your gut too. Also, diet-wise, what you remove from your diet is more important than what you add in. So you cannot be remaining with all these things here and just add in the bone broth and thinking everything is going to be great and you're going to be fixed. We have to get rid of the bad stuff first. That's even more important than the broth. But then once you get rid of these things and eliminate them and get on the right type of diet and fasting protocols, now that bone broth and that collagen and gelatin and amino acids like L-glutamine, if there's a supplement you want to take, L-glutamine, you get it from broth, but you can also supplement with that too, specifically goes in here, and it's an amino acid that heals those tight junctions in your gut. Final thing I forgot to mention about the GI map test. One of the markers in there is called zonulin, Z-O-N-U-L-I-N, zonulin. That is the protein marker that in black and white will show you if you have leaky gut. No other test it will show you if you have leaky gut other than that zonulin marker. It is a stool test, so not the most fun test to do in the world, but it's a one-day stool sample. You do it at home, and it gives us a myriad of different health markers that show us exactly what's going on in your gut. So go back and watch that video. If you would like help, if you want to have this test run, if you want to talk with myself about your digestive issues and get a plan of action for what needs to happen to regain digestive function again, simply contact us at our website or call us at 724-237-5299. I hope this was really helpful. Stay tuned for the next video on microbiome health. Have a great day.